Wow, some wonderful faces here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
We have someone disguised as a lotus flower. We have hmm,
Hello.
hmm.
Hello.
Hello. Carolyn's disguised as a scarf.
I decided that I may be wandering about making marmalade this evening.
Okay.
Well, we're up for that as long as you share.
Yeah.
And we've got birds and we're in good hands. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Welcome everybody. Oh, there's Mary and Rose.
Folks in here. Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
All right. There we go. I'd look at all the names. We have someone described as a flock of beautiful birds.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of like someone opened a whole bunch of doors in different parts of the stadium and they're coming and pretty soon.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Hmm. So why don't we go ahead and kick off, Karen? You want to just sort of introduce yourself and welcome folks, and then we'll sort of dive into our topic for today.
Welcome everybody. I'm Karen Weatherford. I'm a part of the MI community and the host for today, along with David. And we are the Beyond Coaching Experience. And this is a complimentary monthly session that really is a chance for us to reorient, come together, and create ways of being together in real time. And we're very excited by that and to be with you today. Our topic today, I hope you're ready because it's about readiness. And there's so many nuances to that. And it's so timely in this season of the year as well. And we have 90 minutes. We are recording as we speak. So you're being recorded right now. And the recording will be available for each of you who signed up. And so you'll have access to that later, should you choose. And as soon as we get everybody collected, we'll give another minute, I suppose. They're still popping in. And we'll get going. Lots of familiar faces. If you are new to the community, if you want to put something in the chat, and if you're currently in the community, feel free to welcome each other in the chat as we welcome everybody.
Yeah. What are you arriving with today? And Karen, we'll keep good track of the chat box as we go.
I sure will.
Right. So here's, as people are writing or contemplating writing, I want to just give you just a bit of context for today. I perhaps like you, early in my coaching career 25 years ago, I remember putting a lot of energy and earnestness in trying to do a good job for my clients. It was a noble intent. And I often felt then I ended up exhausted, over functioning, over helping, over doing lots of things. And as I've kind of moved through my coaching career and teaching coaches for a long time, I've started to realize and just observe in my practice that that what I am tracking more than anything else in this session in some ways is readiness. And I think particularly across the pandemic, where even for many of us, our capacity to hold space, hold emotions, navigate reality was diminished. And I started to realize that we're often more ambitious for our clients than they are for themselves. We see more possibility than they often see for themselves. And so I've come back to this place of what I would think of sort of as a profound humility, where I'm really just tracking what is this person ready for right now? And pretty much nothing else matters to me in a way, because if they're not ready for it right now, they're not going to do anything with it, and it's just going to sit there. And recognizing that a lot of what our adult clients are trying to do or change are things they probably have wrestled with their whole life. So why would I think that that my coaching intervention is going to profoundly transform an adult who's been, say, behaving or thinking or feeling a certain way for decades? And so I'm just looking for what is the opening now that they might be willing to step into if we gave them some scaffolding. And so that's what we're going to talk a bit about is readiness. And so I'd like to just sort of start this off in a small way. And Karen, I'm going to give you a little change of course here quickly. But is I would like just to kind of break the ice on the topic and get a few of you connected to each other. I'm going to invite you to, Karen's going to bring you into groups of 3. And some might be groups of 2, that would be fine. What I'd like you to do is with as much humor as possible, just remember and briefly recall an incident in your life when you didn't feel ready. And what happened. And I'm thinking about a part of my past where I had worked extensively with a couple that I was going to marry. And they had a very elaborate thing all mapped out. I had all printed out and all ready to go to make sure all the things were said and all the names were included, et cetera, et cetera. And then I promptly left it sitting on my printer. And so I had to remember it all from scratch in the moment while I was at the wedding. So what I want to do is I want to just give us a chance, just kind of get to know each other a bit, just spend 2 minutes, share the humorous highlights of something that happened or you did for which you weren't quite ready. And what did you take from that experience? So if we could give them, let's just say, they say 9 minutes, 3 minutes a person. Just say hello, where you're from, and just some humorous anecdote about something that you were not prepared for and what happened as a result. Okay?
Okay.
All right. And we'll come back and see what you found out. Okay?
All right, folks, and just make sure you get to click and join in, and we're ready to roll. See you all in 9 minutes.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, go for it.
The first thing that popped into my mind was sex.
Well, good for
And
you.
the second thought I had, sorry?
Good for you.
Yeah. And the second thought I had was, oh, I can't share that, you know. But you know, this little group of 3, it just warmed us up. Thank you. You know, I felt safe enough to tell my vulnerable story.
Wonderful. Thank you, Fran.
Well, that's a great kicker offer. We're going to have a menage a trois here. Thank you.
Are there others who would like to share? And you're not required to top Fran's story. It can just be whatever it is. David.
Hi. Yeah, in our conversation, we were talking about safe spaces and how we kind of feel this is a nice place to be in terms of it's comforting and not going into that space where you're kind of in a corporate spin, going through trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing and moving forward, as they say.
Yeah.
And reflecting on where you are now. That's well, I think we all agreed on that.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to share? So I see
Cheryl?
there's
Hi,
Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Good to see you again,
Hi.
Cheryl.
Yeah, hi David, lovely to
Hi.
be here. It's been a long time.
It has.
And a lot's happened since we last met in Sydney.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I did the narrative coaching course probably about 5 or so years ago and did a in-person thing with David in Sydney some time ago as well. So it's lovely to be back engaged with the community. We kind of just talked about, I guess, what happens when we're not ready, and our stories were all kind of resonant around actually the opportunity and the learning that happens when we kind of, I guess, let go of control and perfectionism and all those things that perhaps get in the way. So our kind of key takeout was that actually wisdom, a lot of learning and wisdom comes from actually not being ready and the, you know, and allowing that to kind of unfold.
Yeah, excellent point. Thank you. And Carol.
Hello. My first response to this, and I shared it with our little group, was, it's how are we introverts supposed to respond to this? Being put on the spot. This is like just what you asked us to think about.
Yes, exactly.
But we all confessed to being introverts and all had a story to share. But one of the things that I think was in common among us too was just how mortifying it feels in the moment when we're caught kind of flat-footed and don't know where to go. There's a personal dimension to it.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to share that. Thank you. Well, let me just share a few more things and then about readiness, then see what's on your mind about that, and then we'll give you a practice together in a group. So one of the reasons I've always loved narratives and why I started narrative coaching was I started to realize that many things in life only made sense after the fact. And stories are formed in retrospect. So it tends to give people like ourselves and our clients opportunities to reflect on and narrate an experience. And so this whole series of Beyond Coaching is really around trying to sort of dispel some of the fantasies about coaching. Like we should understand what's going on, that we should have a plan, they should have a plan, that there should be steps to what they're going to be doing, that we should have goals. And over the course of the year, we're going to dispel all those myths. And for me, if you think about changes that you've gone through in your own life, they often don't make sense of how you got there, why you got there, until oftentimes even long after the fact. And you look back and you think, then all the steps start to make more sense. And the illusion that we can know all of that in advance. And I think about even in my own business life, 2 or 3 of the most extraordinary projects I've ever done. Yes, I was prepared. Yes, I was doing a number of things, but the elixir that really catalyzed those projects was something I would never have expected. It came from a surprising source or a surprising turn of events. And I was thinking back to one of my very first trips to teach in Europe. I was taking a train within the Netherlands, and I got on the train. I was on the right train. It said so right on the engine and on the platform, and I got on the train. And so I thought, and I counted, and I knew the stops. I didn't speak Dutch, so I was sort of counting stops and et cetera. And then all of a sudden, I start to realize I have a pretty good sense of direction that the train was heading east, but my destination was west. And I said, what's happening? So I found a couple on the train that looked like they might speak good English, which they did. And I said, I'm going here. What's happening with the train? They said, oh, you needed to be on the back half of the train because the front half of the train is going here, and which I learned is a thing that often happens there. And the back half of the train was just detached at the last station, hooked up to a new train and going the way you want to go. So then I had to then rearrange and find another way back around through the trains to where I wanted to go. And I thought how often that is in life, that you have these plans or these things that you think are going to happen a certain way, and then they don't. And so what I want to do for our first practice, I want to sort of introduce an idea, see what you think about the idea, and then we'll give you a chance to practice it. So as some of you alluded to in your stories, sometimes we're caught so flat-footed that we don't know how to respond, and it may not go well. And many of us have had occasions like this. And so with our clients, we don't want a client who's totally unprepared, because they're not going to be able to rise to the occasion. And a lot of our great efforts in coaching are often underutilized because we're taking our clients to places they're not ready for. Conversely, if a client is already super ready, they probably don't need us. And the achievement of whatever they're going to be doing is with us is a bit anticlimactic. So what we're looking for is this sweet spot where there's an openness, there's a willingness, there's a curiosity. It's what Lev Vygotsky would call these zones of proximal development. What could they do with just the little bit of help from us, or a little bit of scaffolding that would take them that last step to actually, shift that story, be willing to try a new behavior, be willing to let go of an old story that's not working. Like, what are they ready for, kind of right on the cusp of something? And those are the places where I'm most fascinated in terms of developing our own students, but just working in coaching in general. Part of the philosophy that makes this work is that we don't pretend that we're in charge of the conversation, that we're in charge of their change process, that we need to know exactly where this is all going. We're just becoming much better sensors of what's happening for this client in this moment in time, and what do they most need. Like for me with the train, I was on the right train, I was in the wrong half of the train. So I was close, but I might as well have been on a completely different train. At other times, it's less about what we're trying to move towards and more about kind of what do they seem ripe for at this moment that may not even make sense about how it fits with what they said they wanted, but we have a sense that somehow this is important to them. And so in the narrative coaching work, one of the ways this plays out is that if we have a client that says that part of their objective from coaching is they would like to be more assertive at work. And my observation is that if they don't have a safe place to practice that, that's going to be really difficult to achieve because there's too much pressure at work to be their old self. And so I might invite them when they sort of seem like they're both getting more confident and sort of understanding why this is, but also you start to realize that whenever they go to talk about this, they mumble or they talk quietly or they look away, and you realize, oh, I don't think they've ever actually heard themselves talking in an assertive manner. So I might invite them. I said, I would like you to tell me one thing you would like me to do differently as your coach. And then all their old behavior would kick up. Well, you're the coach and I'm, all the deflections or whatever their strategy of avoidances are around. And I said, so you're doing this again. So I'm going to ask you another time. What would you like me to do differently for you as your coach? And then sometimes things will come out. Great. Can you stand taller when you tell me that? Are you willing to stand on top of a table and point your finger at me and ask and demand that I do this? And no, I can't do that. I said, and so it all becomes this sort of serious play. We engage them to begin to allow themselves not to be more assertive at work. That's down the road. Can you be assertive in this moment in time? Because you're in a place where you trust me. You're starting to trust yourself, and you've never heard yourself talk like this before. So the first step or the next step for you is just to hear yourself and feel yourself talking this way. And I said, we can talk about whatever the content is later, but for now, I want you just to allow. And so I might even get them to exaggerate that, right? Like, I want you to scold me. You're not doing this. And it's all play. I'm not going to take it personally. I will learn from this, and there may even be some things you want me to change, but for now, have some fun. And so what we're after with this whole thing about readiness is that even though we know a lot, there's a lot about the human change process that's quite a mystery. And if we relinquish our need to try to understand and plan and project, then so much more becomes possible in terms of what we notice and what we're willing to invite our clients to do. And so for me, with the client that's trying to be more assertive at work, I might engage them in half a dozen different experiments until they feel confident that I can do this at work. Great. And who's the first person at work you're going to try this with? Who loves you the most? Who cares about you the most? Who's your biggest champion? Start with them. Don't start with the person for whom this is the biggest issue for you. So I'm going to stop there and see if you have any thoughts, reflections, if this has stirred up anything for you, and then I'm going to give you a practice when we're done with this. But I'm just really curious what's coming up for you. And if for all those introverted people who might want to just put things in the chat box, that's fine too. I can appreciate that. And Karen will track that for us. But otherwise, you can just wave your hand, put up your electronic hand or whatever, and we'll go from there.
Well, David, I had literally the same experience, and I was heading to Germany, I thought, and all these people were speaking Italian around me. So I sensed that didn't make sense, and ended up having to grab my luggage and run over to another train because they were unhooking and hooking and such. And so I was really tuning into when we pay attention, sometimes it's not so obvious.
Yes.
Yeah. Just, Lisa, you have your hand up. Thank you.
I do. Thank you both. One of the things that arose for me in our small group discussion was that my coaching is feeling more formulaic.
Okay.
And when I do these discovery calls around leadership development opportunities, it's always about the process and I find that that's not really where I want to work.
Mm-hmm.
So what I hear in this group is this, the beauty of curiosity in an open space. So when I'm in these calls, how do I shift the conversation that I have with these people who expect a process or some sort of formula to move them forward, to invite them into something that's less structured and based on what they are ready for and really need to transform?
Yeah, it's a big question. I can just tell you what I've found successful for me and for others I've observed, but there's actually no science to back up their attachment to what they're asking for. It's actually not based in anything other than familiarity, comfort, tradition. The research is pretty consistent that a lot of that stuff doesn't work at all, but it's what people know to ask for because it's more comfortable for them. This imagination that if I have the 360 data, and if I identify some goals and some plans, and some of that can work for some people some of the time, so it's not always off. But what I have found most effective is to not try to explain how I would do this, to not diminish or dismiss their current approach, but actually just to model this for them. So you've decided that this is important to you, right? So how did you come to decide that? And actually to model for them a different way of being in conversation. When was the first time you noticed this in your life or in this job? And so that you start to create these little mini experiences for them. And then it starts to give you a better felt sense for what's actually happening for them. And then there may be even in that a readiness for you to do little mini coaching intervention. And so I've just found that when people are willingness, and a part of this too, you're gauging the readiness of the client to be mature enough to work outside the formulas. if you have a client who can't answer any of your forays into this space in a discovery call, then for me, I wouldn't want to work with them because I would not be the right coach for them. They would want somebody that's more traditionally oriented or whatever, but it's rare for me anymore to find coaches that if you help them feel safe and trusting, and if you honor them for who they are and where they are, then many of them are quite intrigued, because ultimately we're not the ones doing the work, they are. So I'm not trying to gauge, what are they ready for? Are they up for this game? You know, can they come show up and do this work? And I think by modeling it, it gives them a felt experience like, oh, and because then you basically can tell them, and my coaching, you would feel just like this and more. Did you like this? Was this useful to you? And yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share anything? Ask anything. Right.
Just sitting, David, with the difference between just how I'm experiencing the difference between readiness and preparedness.
Mm.
Yeah. And that it would be very hard to read or be with one's client's readiness if there wasn't a fairly embodied, soft readiness within oneself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. As somebody mentioned, Carolyn, in the earlier check-in, a lot of the biggest changes we made in our life, we were not prepared for. We just were in them, and here we are. Here we go. Right. And so the preparation would be more like that scaffolding. And oftentimes the preparation is either after the fact or in the moment. And again, if somebody's totally prepared, the change isn't probably all that significant. And there's a bit of on their edgeness that precipitates most change. So, and Rose, I see you had your hand up before.
Yeah, I did. I'm not sure how to be succinct with all the thoughts that are going through my head, but your example of how to be assertive and using this session in the way that you did kind of blew my mind, because one of my sessions this morning was with a senior person who was, being challenged, being assertive in terms of self-advocating at work in other areas. But it never occurred to me to use that strategy that you did. It just blew me away. We did a whole bunch of other things. And I just found myself with my eyes wide open going, oh, it's that different. The approach is that different. And so it's given me a lot to think about.
Good.
Yeah. And that was one of the 2 meetings that I thought went really well. So I have lots to learn.
And it may go, and there's a lot of ways for things to go well, but I just find that in our programs, we talk a lot about the difference between a 5-year-old who's learning how to ski and a 50-year-old who's learning how to ski. And guess which one learns how to ski faster? It's not the older person most of the time, because they're too worried about doing it right, not falling down, not hurting themselves, not looking stupid. Whereas the kid just wants to have fun and go skiing. And so we're trying to do a lot of the same, not respecting, the issues that our clients are bringing to us, but as Cheryl, I saw put in the chat box, the readiness again is not preparedness. That's a really important distinction that you highlighted, Carolyn. It's more, is there an openness? Is there a budding awareness, like, I probably should pay attention to this, or I think this is more significant than I realized. Is there sort of a willingness to kind of step into that space? And Michelle, your hand went up and then came back down. So
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that this is necessarily associated with readiness.
Okay.
I might be taking a little bit of liberties of the group. I have
Excellent.
clients that I have worked with for probably about 1.5 years. And in that time, I mean, there was some goal setting around health and wellness. Initially, it turned into some pretty deep explorations about her story, and she has made a lot of transition in her life. Our sessions are less frequent and have become largely her reporting to me for an hour. So the last session I had with her, I found myself in a situation where I felt compelled to find a good question to ask or a nice reflection to offer to feel like I was doing some part of my job. I suspect that we're nearing a point where she will see that she doesn't really need this work with me anymore.
Yes.
But I just am curious about your stance on that. Like, when you have clients who are mulling through their own stuff fairly well and spending the entire session just doing reporting to you about that, I find myself feeling like I am not doing a very good job coaching, but that falls back to the mindset of believing that I have to be producing something to be effectively facilitating someone.
Right. So my belief is that clients heal themselves, and we're activating the part of themselves that needs to do the work to make that happen. And we're scaffolding for them in a way, and we're walking alongside them as they're doing that process. So to me, it would be perfectly suitable if the client finds it valuable to hear herself talk out loud about what she's done or is doing differently, and have you as her witness. That could be really valuable to her. At the same time, it feels like a lot of what we do in our work is really challenge a lot of the assumptions of what we think our role as a coach is. So for me, in a given coaching session, I might play 10 different roles, depending on what the client needs at that moment in time. So for me, it's what I heard in your story, Michelle, is a invitation to recontract. Is what I'm doing now valuable to you still? And if so, how is this valuable to you? Would you like to have me in your life this way for more sessions? And or maybe your role is to bring closure. Maybe she doesn't know how to end things. There's a lot of people that don't know how to say goodbye.
Right. And sorry, go ahead.
No. So I would just invite her into a reflection on, what are we doing right now? How is this serving you? Is there any way in which it's not serving you? Are you really done and just don't know how to get out of it? or to break the pattern? And so just see, so that you're consciously in agreement together about why you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I've had that thought about approaching her, but I'd like some of the language that you used around it as more of an invitation, like allowing her to tell me how it is or is not serving her, rather than just approaching it in a, is this still like, are you done kind of a way.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Having somebody witness us is way more valuable than we often appreciate.
And I think that's what's happening right now. The things that she is sharing with me are the new ways she's actually telling me how she's using the things that we've been cultivating over the last year. Yeah.
So she's integrating by verbalizing what she's done, which is important. If you stopped her now, it may undo some of the progress, because she's never had, in hearing herself talk, she may be embedding this in herself. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for letting me take that time.
You're most welcome. And we'll hear something from Carol, and then I'll move you into a practice for yourselves. So
Thank you. Thank you. What Michelle made me think of is that often the power of coaching is what happens outside the session.
Yeah.
And we're not there for that, but it can be reflected back to us in a subsequent session.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm working on a project right now with the Institute of Coaching at Harvard. I've developed a new model for coaching competencies that takes that reality into effect, that measuring the competencies observed by a coach in a session is only a very small part of actually the degree to which we're contributing to the well-being and success of our clients. And we, early on in the coaching industry, say 30 years ago, kind of glommed onto the psychotherapeutic model of the 50 or 60-minute hour as a frame by which we do our work. And I would agree that that what we do in the sessions are important, but is by no means at all the most significant factor in whether our clients are successful. And the problem is that most of the clients have spent all their money on sessions and don't have the money left for the work that actually would need to be done for them to change their behavior or their mindset. So one of the things we're exploring in this project is, could we reframe what coaching looks like to actually map what the research suggests actually is impactful for people in terms of achieving what they're after. I think we get too enamored with the coaching session. And it's not really ultimately the biggest factor in this at all. All right. So, so here's what I would like you to do. So I'm going to have Karen divide you into groups again. We're going to give you 30 minutes in groups of 3. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to spend the first 5 minutes on your own, just taking some notes, like what is something that you're wrestling with or dwelling on or pondering in your own life or practice right now, or confronting, or is confronting you? Like what's up for you that if you had a coach right now, you might want to talk to them about that. Just take 5 minutes, reflect on that, maybe make a few notes to yourself. And then when everybody's done, I'd like you to take, like, what is that, about 7 minutes each or something? To just share in all of that, what do you notice is most present to you right now that might shed some light on what you're actually ready for next? Even if it doesn't necessarily make logical or rational sense as to why it would contribute to your what you're after. But as my dear friend here, Carolyn, and I, in our new program, our ID Way program, we talk a lot about, rather than focusing on the problem or whatever and looking for the scaffolding to support it, we pay attention to what scaffolding is in your life and what's it trying to draw your attention to, whether it's a crashed tanker or or whatever. And so, like, if you think about what you're working on for yourself right now, what is and you were to look around you, what scaffolding or things are showing up around that issue that you might want to pay attention to and might say something about what you're ready to notice, own, deal with now as part of this larger picture you're working on. And just use your the other 2 of you in your group, just to help ask them a couple of questions. Don't coach them, please. Please don't coach them. Just ask them a couple of very simple questions about their own experience, about what they're noticing in themselves as they're talking. Okay? And so everybody should have at least, again, 6-7 minutes to be witnessed and inquired about, and then we'll come back together at the very end of our time and see what emerged for you. Are there any questions about what I'm asking you to do? Okay. I'll assume that means I was clear. I'm going with that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, we're going with that.
Yeah.
And I've rearranged just a few of you, only in the sense that some of the rooms needed to disappear because some people dropped off. So you're going to be with at least one person you were with before, but there may have been just a small amount of switching there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Enjoy.
Enjoy. And
All right.
And also we had Julie join us right before we came back together. So welcome, Julie. We're just in the closing of our program and we're glad you're here, and we have a little more than 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
I totally lost track of time, so I apologize for being late.
You're in good company today.
Yeah.
You're not, others have joined that tracks. No
Okay.
worries. We're glad you're here.
All is good.
Thank you.
Just wanted to we'll take a couple of minutes at the very end, and we can even stay after if you need to, just if you have any questions about our programs. Happy to share some more about that. But for now, I want to see what you discovered about yourself and or readiness in your conversations. Michelle.
I wasn't really sure what to expect when I came to this class. I'm new to your work. It really resonates with what I already do and what I have discovered. What I discovered in this last conversation is that I am more than ready to begin having these kinds of interactions with other professionals and other individuals again. So
Excellent.
I'm very thankful.
I'm glad.
Maria.
I don't really have anything to share. I was just, it was, a clapping thing for Michelle because we were in the same group.
Well,
That's welcome.
endorsements always welcome.
Yeah.
Rose.
I found it really powerful to just kind of share a bunch of threads of things that have been going on recently, kind of, pull them together, reflect, let the emotions come up and really feel seen and heard, and have that space held, sort of to feel more clarity at the other end of the process. So thanks, Carolyn.
Lucky you.
Indeed.
Yeah. David.
Hi. What was very clear in what I was talking about was being able to articulate, even in self-reflection, to myself in a coherent way, using language to myself to understand what's going on in the coaching that I'm doing. So I find, David, when I come to your sessions, I really enjoy the way you're able to explain what's going on. I think you spend a lot of time thinking about it, and I love it. And I'm not there at all. So the process is happening, and I can see that, but I'm not able to come up with the words to myself to learn from it, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's where I am. Thanks.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like our 5-year-old skier, David. I think one of the downsides of most Western culture is the assumption that we have to have the words before we can do anything. And, what has become so apparent, particularly when we pivoted our pilot of our narrative release program, is that the best words come after the fact, not before. You don't even know what you're, the illusion of understanding, and as opposed to just being or doing, and then letting the words find you.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's great. It reminds me of a comedian that I'm very fond of. And he said, I always think of the best joke after I've done my show.
Yeah, it's true.
I thought it was a real blessing not to be coached, and I loved sitting with you, Rose, and again having the space held just to reflect. It sort of speaks to what you said earlier, David, at some point about, we forget how powerful it is to be witnessed. It's a great reminder to sit with folk here and just feel it for ourselves. It's very resourcing, I think.
Yeah.
For me anyway.
Laurel, you had your hand up.
Yeah. So I share something about how I had a block about contacting my previous coaching clients. And then on Sunday, I was able to do it. And it sounded like, oh, it just this little thing happened, and then it was easy. And that the person reflected back to me a couple times. I didn't respond. So she, that's why she repeated it. And I said, it wasn't easy. I was working on that issue in therapy for like 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
And then Now it's easy. And so what can look like, so it's readiness now.
Yeah.
But it was not readiness that whole, that whole previous time. It was, I can't do this. I need help. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'm hearing in your story, Laurel, is that again, you were ready to take action after all the effort you put in, right? So the readiness is to do now. The readiness for that was not there before. And so part of it is also for ourselves and for our clients, expanding what we would consider useful.
Yeah.
And for example, something you will know this, but I've been on my own like year-long journey, Laurel, on my own issue, similar to yours, around the business. And I've done a lot of things intentionally, which have been very helpful, but there were still a few things that were eluding me to kind of get the clarity that I needed. And I knew that enough, in part through my meeting in the virtual pub with Carolyn, that the path to those last few pieces, those last few steps, were not ones I could plan or control. And as part of it, I said, I need some new energies. A new part of myself needs to be activated for me to be able to finish what I've set out to do. I'm not a big TV watcher. I might watch 1 or 2 shows a year, but I thought I need some energy. So I started like just cruising through Netflix. What's a show that has a character that's the epitome, the total epitome of what I want to become? And I found it. And it's not a show I would normally watch. It was an actor that I really, really appreciate. He's extraordinary at what he does. And so I watched it over the course of like 6 months. And for the sole purpose of being taught by this character and watching and noticing that part of myself. And that was, for me, that and A Lost Suitcase were the 2 biggest factors, which was more, again, who would think that A Lost Suitcase would change your life? And it did. Because if I had lost it a year ago, that would have been my old self losing that suitcase. But my new self was all at the cusp of this change. And the lost suitcase was the invitation to the final step across the threshold. I couldn't have planned that in a million years. I was pissed about it for weeks. I got it back after a month. Most of the clothes inside were soaking wet, had been at some point in time. And it was utterly transformative. But you can't put that in a coaching book. Go lose your suitcase. It'll change your life. But for me, at that point in time, on that issue, it was the perfect surprise scaffolding. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So just have a couple of minutes. Anybody else want to share anything about their conversation? And like I said, if you want to stay on, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about our programs if you want to come learn some more with us. All good? All right. Well, thank you for your time. We do these every month. It's the same link, same time, and they are recorded if you miss one, because once you're registered, you'll get an email after this and have a chance to miss one, listen to one if you miss it. So I just want to thank you, Time. It's always wonderful to be in these spaces, and we're glad you came to join us. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you again soon.
And David, before we close off, we do have just a few moments. Could we take I would invite you, if you could, to take a few moments to talk about the other option that has just come up that is available, that based on the questions I'm hearing, this community would really appreciate as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we were going to launch 2 programs this month that we're not. We're going to merge them into one program. The narrative coaching program has begun, but you can still sign up for that. And we have a wonderful cohort that starts and will run through October. Probably in June, we'll start our first ever coaching offers for graduates of narrative coaching. And so we've got some really amazing opportunities there around supervision and support. And then this new program is a combination of our narrative release program and our integrative development program. And it basically, the narrative release is the inner work. It's the spiritual philosophy that underpins everything I've ever done. It allows us to have the self-regulation, the self-awareness, the emotional capacity to be present in the moment with whatever's unfolding for the client. It's married to the integrative development program, which is all about the external half of that equation, which is how do you help them leverage that moment and access the potential for learning and development. So I have not done a traditional leadership program, workshop, training for I think 7 or 8 years. I'll never do them again for a lot of reasons, but and we're the ID part of this helps you learn what to do or how to do it when those moments arise. The and our part of it allows you to actually show up to those moments. And so it allows you then to take our methodology and take our philosophy and bring it into any moment of your life. As a partner, as a parent, as a facilitator, as a consultant, as a leader. And it's, for me, it's narrative coaching, but without the taken into any domain of your life. And I'm teaching this program with Carolyn this year. It's while we live this way in our lives, I mean, it becomes who you are and how you are. Yeah, it's just really, it will start in April. And on Friday, at some point on Friday, all that will go up on the new website about the new program, but it will be available to you. And then we're starting our learning community on a large circle platform, which will allow you to connect with other students and graduates. And we're doing some really wonderful things there as well to keep people engaged with smaller pieces of learning and opportunities to connect, to partner with others in the community. And yeah, so it's an exciting year. And I think we're streamlining the business a bit. We're trying to adapt to what people are asking for. And I'm working on some global research projects to inform both of these programs. So that feels really exciting as well. So. Yeah. And you can always, Karen, would you just put the MI Connect email address in the chat box?
And I was just putting another one in there about the finding ourselves.
With Allison, yeah, cool. Yeah, we're doing a partnership with one of our NC faculty members. Yeah. Which is another, I think it's akin to this, but it's different and a little more fine-tuned. Yeah. It's basically, we're creating a program across this year to ask all the big questions about coaching that never get asked. What is coaching? What is my role in coaching? What do we think coaching is supposed to be doing? It's really quite fun. And I really enjoy working with Allison, and it's just asking all the big questions that don't get asked. So, all right. And I haven't put that email in there, and I apologize, I don't have that at my fingertips. So okay. Would you mind just typing that in, David? I'm just trying to figure out how to, oh, yeah, everyone. And there is another question, and Sharon, if you'd like to stay on afterwards, you had another question about the narrative coaching cohort and the cost and stuff. So if we can help you with that, please feel free to stay on. Yeah, so just if you have any more questions, you can just write miconnect@themomentinstitute.com and we'll take care of that for you and get you the information that you need. You also can, yeah, if you need to talk to me, they'll help you set that up as well. All right. So again, I'm conscious of your time. I thank you for your time with us today. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to stay on in case there's more questions. Thank you, Karen. Fabulous job as always. And, yeah. All right. Good to see your face, Michelle Greenhill. Popped in just in time to say goodbye.
Thanks all.